Hey, what's going on everyone? In this video I'll be taking a look at one of the sleekest master grades out there, the Gundam F91 version 2.0. As always, I'll be looking at this kit in 4 categories: the build, the appearance, the articulation, and the gimmicks. I'll be giving each a score from 1 to 5, so at the end I can tally it all up for an average score. Hopefully I can help you decide if you should pick up this model kit. Okay, now let's jump right into this build. First and foremost, this kit is technical. Extremely technical. Even though Bandai literally included English translations in the manual, you still need to be in your A game throughout this entire build. Some of these pieces are just so microscopically small, especially in the transformable head. If you drop any of these pieces, odds are you are never finding them. Just like the 1.0 version of the F91, this kit features absolutely zero polycaps, instead opting for ABS plastic. So every joint has a pretty in-depth construction that I'm sure someone who likes painting inner frames could have a blast with. Also, these gray lines running up the legs and forearms that normally would mean painting are actually inner frame poking through. It's just so cool. I wonder if someone could paint the inner frame a glossy red or a gold or something, and then just have colored lines running everywhere. You also get plated gold pieces for the chest, legs, and backpack. Bandai really pulled out all the stops on this build. Pretty much all the vents on this kit are individual molded pieces too. For example, these triangles on the knees. The black in the center is actually inner frame poking through, and the yellow is an individual part that plugs into the white armor. It's the same way for these vents on the feet and the front of the skirts. Even when the inner frame isn't poking through, the armor pieces are separated in such a way that painting literally only takes a few seconds. As far as painting goes, it's really just optional stuff. I personally just added black to the inside of these vents on the front and back of the shoulders, as well as the bottom of the skirts. Then I added this yellow to the inside of the vent on the side of the shoulder. The black here is actually inner frame poking through, so all you really need is the yellow. Next, I added this black to the side chest vent. And lastly, I added white to the front of the radiator fins, just to shoot for more anime accuracy. The only major issue I have aside from how small some of these pieces can get, is how the iconic F91 decal is done. Unfortunately, you only get a single dry transfer, so again, you need to be in your A game when you're building this kit. Any mistake could ruin your build. Okay, sounds like I'm overhyping this build here, but really, this build was super interesting and completely blows the 1.0 out of the water. This is one of those builds that really raises the bar for what's possible with Gunpla, and for that, I have to give this build an amazing 5 out of 5. I just can't really recommend it to beginners though. I'd say you need at least 4 or 5 master grades under your belt before even attempting this build. Now it's time to take a look at this appearance. You know, I've always liked the look of the Gundam F91. It's so minimalistic, but still has enough going on to be interesting. And is it just me, or does the chest look like a blue Datsun 240Z? I don't know, but anyway, like the other 2.0 master grades, this kit seems to be going for more of an anime accurate look, and I absolutely love it. There's no needless panel lines muddying up the design here, and the proportions line up pretty closely with how he looks in the anime. The colors here are fantastic as well. I love the kind of faded blue used in the chest, and how bright this white is. You also get 2 different shades of yellow for the vents. The waist skirts have a bit more orange mixed into them, while the shoulders and knees are a more traditional pure yellow. You know, it's really the small little touches that spice up these more clean anime accurate designs. Speaking of small, this kit is tiny, being closer in scale to a Figma rather than any other master grade. It's always been interesting to me how Bandai downsized their Gundams in the early 90s. Even the AU Gundams were short. You get the usual 2 sets of decals for this kit. The first being the standard set of peel and stick caution signs. I don't know why you would use them on this more anime accurate look, but they're there if you want them. The second is a really interesting sheet of dry transfers. You actually get the model numbers for 3 separate units, which is pretty cool, especially considering it's mentioned in the anime that 3 F91s were produced. The appearance of this kit is everything I could ask for from an F91 model kit. Again, it's leaps and bounds better than the 1.0, and because of the amazing part separation, it's not too hard to get this guy looking great. I have no choice but to give this kit another perfect 5 out of 5. This is definitely the best looking F91 in model kit form. Now let's see if his articulation can keep the high scores coming. As always, let's start at the feet. These may be the strangest feet I've seen in a Gunpla. The toes and heels can actually tilt independently, and the toes themselves have a really crazy upward tilt. Yet for some reason you don't get anything downwards. It's really weird. The ankles are a hinge on a peg, so you get decent forwards and backwards movement, but not as much as you like in terms of spins because of the ankle armor. The knees are also really weird. If you just straight up bend them, then you'll get close to a 135-degree bend. However, you can kind of pull the knee out, and eventually you'll get a little bit more than that. I think the extra pull-out feature was to give room for the thrusters on the back. For the skirts, you get the kind of movement you would expect. The back skirt is locked in place though. The whole front skirt section can actually drop down, by the way. It's a cool gimmick, but really I didn't find it useful for anything. The hips are a joint on a peg, so you get great kicks and some decent splits, but there's not much going on in terms of spins because of how the armor is laid out. You get a good spin from the waist, but it's nothing compared to how great these ab crunches are. The shoulders have the usual 360 spin, but have fairly limited lateral movement, probably because of the radiator fins inside of the shoulders. However, you do get a pretty great 45-degree pop out. The arms have an about average 135-degree bend from the elbow, and the usual 360-degree spin, but this time it's in the forearm rather than the upper arm. The hands are on ball joints, and they use interchangeable fingers. I much prefer the independent fingers of the 1.0, however these will probably be able to hold weapons easier. The head is a ball joint on a hinge, so you get pretty good movement overall. The Vespers are a deep ball joint on a rail, so they can pull forward pretty well, but not much else. This is kind of weird to say, but the 1.0 actually has slightly better articulation. Not by much, but still, I didn't expect that. Honestly, this kit's articulation really doesn't stand out that much. So I'll have to give the articulation a still above average score of 4 out of 5. Don't get me wrong, he can still do a ton of cool poses, but there's definitely more articulated kits out there. And lastly, let's run down these gimmicks. First up is the token beam rifle. Like the kit itself, it has pretty great part separation, so it just looks fantastic. He can hold the rifle just fine thanks to a dedicated set of fingers. Next up are his beam sabers. There's actually no pegs in the dedicated beam saber hands, so he actually has a little bit of trouble holding them up. Still, they look pretty great, and I always love when beam sabers come in a color other than pink. They store in the side of the left skirt, which has a really cool spinning gimmick. He also comes with this huge beam shield. It can be a little hard to maneuver around the shoulders, especially with the radiator fins out. However, unlike the 1.0, the generator actually pulls out from the arm, and the shield itself is on a pretty good ball joint, so you can make it work if you're patient enough. You also get an extra shield generator that can be stored on the side skirt, which is a nice touch. His last optional weapon is this massive cannon. Again, great part separation makes this thing look amazing. He can actually hold it pretty well too, thanks to the handle being on a hinge. You can store it on the back skirt, but unfortunately the connection is weak and overcomplicated. Now what about his iconic Vespers? Well, honestly, they aren't really a step up from the 1.0. They even have the same horrible nub marks on the back. Still, I really like how they look, especially if you apply this dedicated Vesper decal. Unfortunately, they're really difficult for him to hold. The Vespers are essentially locked on a set path, and when you add that to arms which don't have the best articulation, you end up with pure frustration. On top of that, just when you get the handle in his hand, the stupid interchangeable fingers pop out. It's just a nightmare. As far as gimmicks of the actual suit go, the main one are these pull-out radiator fins. They're actually pretty finicky and take a little bit of patience to get lined up. The vents on the back of the leg don't suffer from this problem though, they just fold open no problem. This kit actually comes with an optional head that can actually transform between the traditional Gundam face and this, face. Canonically, it's actually an extra vent to help dissipate excess heat. But anyway, the optional head looks pretty good when it's transformed. Before the Gundam face, you have this pretty bad looking seam line down the front, so usually I keep it as a dedicated open face head. Also on a side note, you need to paint the head Vulcans on the transformable head, but not on the standard head. It's really weird. Lastly, this kit comes with a dedicated stand. This is a really nice touch, however the stand itself is pretty bare bones, with absolutely zero articulation. An action base is actually a much better way to get this guy off the ground. You can, however, buy an optional LED set and plug that through the arm to make the vents light up. Unfortunately, all the LED kits were out of stock, so I couldn't pick one up. Personally, I don't really regret it though. I blinked an LED through the kit, and honestly, the effect really didn't impress me. Also, the eyes don't light up, which, in my opinion, is a major selling feature of any LED kit. Okay, this kit comes with a lot of gimmicks. This is usually grounds for a perfect score, but unfortunately, he just can't hold the Vespers. That's such a letdown, and honestly, it's the most important gimmick of the F91. The radiator fins and beam sabers are also pretty frustrating, so I'll have to knock the score down to a still near perfect score of 4.5 out of 5. If you don't plan on posing with the Vespers, then I could see giving this a 5, but I mean, come on, it's the F91, it needs the cool Vesper poses. Alright, time to wrap this up for an average score. The build was a perfect 5 out of 5. This build really raises the bar for master grade engineering. The appearance was another 5 out of 5. It's about as anime accurate as you can get, so of course, I loved it. The articulation was a 4 out of 5. Honestly, this is one of the major letdowns of this kit, if you can call a 4 out of 5 a letdown. And the gimmicks received a 4.5 out of 5. It comes with pretty much every gimmick you could ask for, but many of them are just finicky or frustrating to get working. Tallying all that up, dividing, and of course rounding, this kit receives a 4.6 out of 5. Or more accurately, a 92.5%. I'm pretty sure that ties this kit up with the high new Gundam version Katoki and the RX-78-2 version 2.0, which means this kit is absolutely amazing. Really, despite its somewhat disappointing articulation, the build and appearance are just incredible. This kit is a pretty huge step up for Gunpla, and I'm looking forward to Bandai using this kind of intricate engineering in future kits. Alright, feel free to leave any questions you have about this kit in the comments, and I'm more than happy to get back to you. Or you can just recommend more kits for me to review. I'm thinking the J-Gun next, but who knows at this point, right? Anyways, see you next time.